What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It's time for a review of something that I don't cover a ton of on the channel. I don't normally talk about metal all that much, but prog always interests me. Prog rock, prog metal, whatever it is, just kind of forward-thinking, long-form type songs. They've always kind of caught my ear and attention, and I had a lot of users and fans, viewers, whatever, just suggesting this to me, suggesting that I check out this band, and someone sent me the track Blot, and I was hooked. Now, this is AUTOMATA Part 1 and Part 2, and I'm honestly not sure why they split this release in half. It kind of pisses me off because Blot leaves you hanging, and then a lot of fans, especially the hardcores, they were hanging on all the way from March until July when AUTOMATA Part 2 came out. So I'm going to be reviewing this as one whole album. I mean, it's an hour and 8 minutes long. It kind of makes sense for a prog album, something that has those tendencies to be lengthy. In fact, if you combine the two parts, it still doesn't even make their longest album to date. So with that being said, mini rant aside, let's talk about the new material, AUTOMATA Part 1 and 2 from Between the Buried and Me. I pretty much went into these records cold. I heard AUTOMATA Part 1 about a week before Part 2. I had previously heard the song Blot and basically just decided to wait until Part 2 came out to start further getting into the material, and a week before I started playing Part 1, and I really started falling in love with a lot of the aspects of the record. Now, in the past, have I been familiar with Between the Buried and Me? Well, I could say that it was a band name that I recognized, but beyond that, not really. Like I said, I don't cover a ton of metal, and I don't always really lean that much towards the genre in terms of finding favor with it. It's not that I have anything against it, it's just not normally my thing, a lot of the time at least. But with Between the Buried and Me, I could see that there definitely were those prog tendencies in there, where they rely heavily on these instrumental breaks, and also throw in different things that you might not expect. In fact, on this very record, AUTOMATA, you're gonna hear banjo breakdowns fused together with the electric guitar and then pounding drums in the background. It's just really creative stuff, and even though I haven't liked everything that I've heard from the band, in fact I went out and checked out some of their back discography after listening to these two, I don't love everything, but I can at least give them kudos for trying to mix it up and trying to make things interesting, not just doing the typical chugging metal whatever. The band have hailed AUTOMATA as their most ambitious release to date. It's something that covers a lot of different counterpoints. It has varying degrees of things that allow them to express their creativity, whether that be through the theatrics of the second half of the album, which I'm not quite as keen on, and we'll get more into that, but they also have different parts of technical death metal, something that's a little bit more proggy. They just mix together and kind of sew these things up quite perfectly, especially in the first half, and I was honestly surprised at how much I was drawn in for repeated listens. Now, I definitely think that the first half is better than the second, but overall, I'm just gonna give one rating. I mean, I guess at the end, if I really need to, I can break it down, give a rating for each half, but we're gonna give one score overall, and that's because I do feel like this should be listened to as one complete project, AUTOMATA. The record starts off with a huge fiery punch and a huge win as well. That's Condemned to the Gallows, lasting over 6 minutes, having different parts and different sections to it. I love the aggressive vocals that come through from Tommy Rogers on this one. I think he's a great vocalist that definitely has a great register for his growl and for his scream, but he also has a really good singing voice, which is something that caught me off guard. I didn't find it to be that great in the past, but I do think that he's improved, and that's just based on the material that I've heard, a few clean sections here and there, but honestly at this point with AUTOMATA, it seems like the clean vocals have really stepped up their game. And I'm not just talking the opening moments on the record, I'm talking all throughout, down to the grid that closes out the record. Gallows flows perfectly into house organ, which is something that pumps you up in a very different way. It has an interesting dynamic about it because the vocals are very important on the track, yes, but I also feel like they kind of expand their horizon. It starts off very heavy, very pummeling with Condemned to the Gallows, but then it moves into something that's not so suffocating but still isn't fully letting off the gas pedal, and that makes way perfectly for this album to keep rolling along, and that's what keeps the listener engaged, and that's what I'm liking about this so much. I already mentioned loving the closing to the first half Blot, which is something that does fuse together everything from banjos, guitars, loud drums, and these great instrumental breaks that make way for really great vocal patterns as well. And it can go from being aggressive to a little bit more chill, a little bit more floaty for sections, but then it moves right back in. And sure, a lot of prog bands, a lot of prog acts definitely do this, but the way that they make use of their own musicianship, their own skills here, it really feels like they found something that worked for them and they just ran with it. Now, another track on the first album that I have to give kudos to, other than the interlude, which is pretty cool, I do like Gold Distance, but right before that, we get a song called Millions. There's such a fulfilling bass line on Millions. It's something that really creeps up on you as the song keeps going, and also the weird juxtaposition between the more clean vocals and also the really gnarly screams that just get in your face. The guitars are loud, reminding me of something maybe a little bit more radio rock friendly, or else metal, I suppose, that gets played on the radio, but the riffs are by no means sterile or safe. I just like the way that this song seems like it's guiding a ship through a sea of lava, and it's only a matter of time before maybe we get out, or else maybe we don't, so there's a sense of impending doom. Yellow Eyes is the only one on the first half of the record that I'm not quite as drawn to. I don't think it's a bad song per se, but at nearly 9 minutes, I do think that the song overstays its welcome. And that's saying something, because one of my favorite songs on the second half is the longest song by far, easily the proverbial bellow on part 2 of Automata. But this is something that definitely comes through very strong and makes great use of these gorgeous riffs, something that are deeply layered but also really melodic in an engaging way, and they don't strip away from the fact that this song is a prog song at its core. And on Yellow Eyes, I definitely feel like they just kind of messed around a little bit more, or else that's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like a fully fleshed out track, but something like the proverbial bellow definitely does. I think this song kicks ass. I love air guitaring along to this one, and sadly, it is the best thing on part 2, as they quickly kind of go into a little bit more mediocre and also theatric territory. Now, that's not to say that part 2 of Automata suffers because of its theatrics. I think that it kind of comes through as generic because the theatrics remind me of other things, and they just don't really fit the overall vibe and the steam that's been picked up to this point on the album. After the proverbial bellow, you're probably expecting something huge, and instead, they glide into track number 2 on that half, which is of course titled Glide. Glide and the voice of Trespass that comes right after that are like metal meets this weird theatric run of like My Chemical Romance's The Black Parade and the debut album A Fever You Can't Sweat Out by Panic at the Disco, and I don't know if that's really a compliment. It's something that gives you kind of a dark carnival vibe, but it also comes across kind of cheesy to me, and I don't think the payoff is really fully there. And we don't get that payoff until the final song, which does make it pretty worthwhile, still not quite as great as the first half, but The Grid is that track. Now, this is a very big song. It has sections, it's nearly 10 minutes, and it is built to last. This is something that has an impact, a reach, a great vocal performance, and also a great outro to it after a nice solo really caps things off. We're just kind of guided gently into the night, and that's exactly how I would want this album to be sent off. It's just that right before that, we definitely had some quality droppage, and it's not like it's the worst thing ever, I just don't feel like it fits in with Automata as a whole. If you're looking at this as 2 totally different albums, then I suppose you could take it as such, but the fact that there are references to other songs on the album, in fact, Voice of Trespass borrows from Condemned to the Gallows, and I like the way that they put that melody back in there. It makes the song worthwhile. There's many reasons why that song is worthwhile, but still. I think that there is 2 different sections here, but I don't think it's really technically 2 different albums. It was all recorded at the same time. Jamie King produced it all alongside the band themselves. It all feels kind of cohesive. It's just that there's a few counterpoints that don't work as well as others. But overall, I think that this record is definitely worthwhile. If I had to give ratings to both sections, I would say a 4 for part 1 and a 3 for part 2. So overall, this is a very strong 3.5 for Automata part 1 and 2, or really just Automata as a whole. Have you heard this record from Between the Buried and Me? Sound off in the comments section down below if you have. Don't forget to drop a like on the video while you're here, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future uploads. Other than that, you can find another hard rock review right over here, or another recent video that I did on the channel right over here. All of my social media accounts, including my Twitch, are all linked in the description down below, and I'll see you soon for more on ARTV.